All right, we are recording right now. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Enlightening Tangent podcast. I'm your host, Gautam, aka The Seeker of Wisdom. I'm a manifestation coach, and today we have Hillary Jubilee. Hi, Hillary. How are you?
Hi, how are you? I'm awesome. Thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure having you. So, yeah, just for why don't you introduce yourself? Just for the audience who might not be familiar with you.
Sure. My name's Hillary. I'm a manifestation coach. It's Hillary Jubilee on Instagram and YouTube. And yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for joining the podcast and everything. So, yeah, like how did this all like begin for you? This manifestation journey, where did this begin for you?
Well, my grandma introduced me to The Secret, which is, the beginning for a lot of people to the law of attraction.
Mhm.
And also the movie called What the Bleep Do We Know, which is another older movie that's kind of similar to The Secret about quantum physics, and Dr. Joe Dispenza is in that one. My grandma is really into that kind of stuff, and she showed me when I was in my really early 20s, and that kind of opened the door to manifestation and the law of attraction and creating your reality. Um, yeah, that's where it started.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I think one thing that I really like about you is that you are definitely one of the most like authentic coaches that I've ever seen, especially on YouTube. Like I remember like watching your ladder experiment, the I will not climb a ladder experiment, and how yeah, like you really kind of vlogged the entire thing, and you were so authentic about the whole experience. And I really
Yeah,
enjoyed it because like it kind of like like showed all the things that you did, and you were really kind of like truthful about the whole experience. You know and I really kind of appreciated that because I think like people really needed to see that kind of like genuine authentic kind of videos, and I thought like you did a very good job. And yeah, and one thing you also mentioned in one of your recent videos is the intuition, with your whole thing with SP. Like
mhm,
we will not
mhm.
like get into that whole thing, but like just the idea of like following your gut intuition. And I really wanted to know your
Yeah,
opinion and your take on where the that falls into this whole manifestation and everything, like because
absolutely.
folks are really confused about that. So yeah, I would love to hear your take on
Yeah,
intuition. Yeah.
sure. So first of all, thank you so much for your kind words. And yeah, I just I think that intuition, it just listening to yourself is so important. And I think sometimes the community here, on YouTube and Instagram or whatever, the law of assumption community can stray away from that, and it
Right.
can just in my case, it was sort of a case where I was like, okay, well, I have this feeling within, this intuition feeling within that's telling me, something isn't right. But I just ignored it because I was like, no, like I must not be having the right mindset. I need to like change, just change the way I'm showing up, change who I'm being, so that I can, shift this situation. And it just ended up being so awful, like not listening to myself. And I can't like overstate how important it is to listen to that inner voice, because in my opinion that is how you're guided and how God speaks to you. And like
Right.
it's a difficult thing because it's like, okay, in the law of assumption community, it's like you are God, but your ego isn't. Like me, the person as Hillary, like that identity, that ego person, that ego isn't God. So it's just like a distinction of co-creating with the broader part of you, and listening to that inner voice to, guide you to really your highest and best outcome. And
Right.
I just think that getting quiet, meditation and all that stuff helps you to be more in tune with that. And that will ultimately bring you to your desires quicker.
Awesome. Yeah. So like how would someone know if it's their inner voice or it's just their ego talking them out of their desires? Like, is there a way to identify like this is my inner voice talking, or that compared to maybe saying like well, this is maybe my ego just that's doing
Yeah.
the talking here? Like how does one identify with it? Like, yeah.
it's how you feel. So it is a
Right.
tough one because on my journey I was like, okay, but like, is this just my logical mind like trying to talk me out of something? Am I trying to self-sabotage? But
Right.
like, if you're having like a constant nudge and it won't go away, it's like
Mm.
your intuition is trying to tell you something. Like, you can feel it in your body.
Mm.
If you just get quiet and listen and feel, it's not necessarily, a logical mind thing. It's like, hey, what are you feeling in your gut? If it's, to do with a person, like, how do you feel when you're with that person? Your body's going to tell you the answer. And just listening to those feelings within and discernment, and just, obviously meditation makes it easier to have that voice be clearer.
Right, right, right. Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. Like, definitely, I thought like, maybe meditation, helps you kind of quieten the mind. It helps you kind of just
Mm-hmm.
focus. Because the more you're watching videos all the time or just listening to stuff, it kind of just like mutes out everything. Like you really need to, to really hear it, as loud as possible. Like you really need to kind of quieten your mind. Like that's something that I do agree with you and resonate with for sure there. And yeah, like I think you did a very good job of drawing up the differences. And I guess what you're saying is like if it's very persistent, if it's like that constant nudges there, it's like that itch you can't scratch, like there's just something wrong that you can't quite put your finger on. If it's a very persistent feeling, then I guess you can get clarity on it by meditating. Would that be accurate to say?
Yeah, and also like sometimes what your intuition is telling you is like, in my case anyway, it was against what I wanted to be doing. It was like my intuition is telling me like, I know we're not getting into this topic, but telling me that I wasn't in the right relationship.
Right,
But
right,
my
right.
logical mind was just like, no, like I can manifest this. Like I can, it's like on paper it looked good, and I was like, this, I want it to like work. But my intuition was just like, it was against I what was easy. It was against what was easy. It was like, this is what's right for you, but it wasn't. I didn't want to take action on it because it was like, oh, I'll just explain it away and try to ignore it. Just maybe it'll go away, but it just never went away. So yeah, a persistent nudge from within, and the topic of the question of whether I should stay or go was like constantly in my mind. So it's like this just
Mm,
keeps coming up. So
mm, mm.
yeah, I think a
Yeah.
persistent nudge.
Right. Right. Because even in like topics which are like non-SP related,
Mhm.
I feel like that feeling is always there. Because as soon as I was watching your video, I think like I was just like thinking about my experiences. And not necessarily SP related per se, but it's more like with career, for example, what led me to where I'm at right now, what made me so bold and just kind of go with the like because I took a gap year from school, and I was like, that's a move that I wouldn't have done, but I was like, I felt so inspired. There was always that nudge there. And so like
Yeah.
yeah, and I always was like wondering like is there something else that's helping me out here? Because I know for a fact that
Mm.
deep down I don't have, guys would say like you don't have the balls to do it. Like I didn't have the balls to kind of like pull that kind of move off like a long time ago. I was like, where did I even get that? Like, looking back, like that's one thing that I always like kind of it's still a head scratcher for me, because my logical mind didn't have that capacity to kind of do what I did. But
Mm.
the moment I kind of surrendered to that, things just kind of happened. And I was just like, oh, okay. And by the time I'm through with it, like it was just like like within like a snap of my fingers, I guess, like things just happened. And as soon
Yeah.
as I listened to the nudge, like it just kind of like did things for me. And I was never able to explain that fully. But I think after hearing your video, like it kind of made sense. Like I was like, okay, I guess like when you do hear that kind of voice, um you know it does happen really quickly for you. Like things just kind of shifts for you. And one thing I've,
Mhm.
I've noticed is that, and you tell me what you think about this, is that it's probably the path of least resistance as well. Like what do you think about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So like, just quickly. So like, I feel that, you know, God or the universe or source energy or whatever you want to call it, like
Mhm.
it is all knowing and all powerful and like
Mhm.
can see what you cannot see, right? Like it's like
Absolutely.
us
Yeah.
from our little human ego perspective. I want this, I want that, like I want these little desires, but like just that larger part of you knows so much more than what you could even imagine. So like it just knows exactly the path of least resistance to bring you to your highest good. Like just outcomes that you couldn't even imagine. It will bring you there without you even orchestrating it. So just having that piece of surrender and allowing it to guide you as well. Like it doesn't need to be full control and it doesn't need to be, um, exactly how your ego needs it to turn out this exact way. It's like, yeah, we have desires and we can manifest whatever we want, but also a co-creation process and adding that surrender in. And yeah, the path of least resistance, our God or our source energy knows what that is. We don't know what that is. So like it will nudge us
Right.
towards
Right.
whatever
Right.
our least resistance path is for sure.
Right. So, do you think that like it's better for someone to perhaps like aim for more of a general desire rather than being like super duper specific? Then is that what you would recommend someone to do then?
I think it depends on how you
Right.
feel on the subject. So I've been listening to a lot of Abraham Hicks lately, and she talks a lot
Mm.
about, or they talk a lot about, resistance. And um, if you're like, let's say you're wanting to manifest money and you're saying, okay, like I want X amount of dollars. Let's say I want $1 million, but you're so far from that. It's like, it, you can't even fathom that. And your mind is just like, okay, your logical mind is just like, that's so unrealistic, and you can't even buy into it and you can't even feel it real because it feels so far away for you. It's like maybe you could start in that particular situation. You have too much resistance, so like you're not
Mm.
feeling that affirmation in your body. So maybe you could start with, more money's always coming to me. Abundance is everywhere. Money is flying over my
Mm.
head right now. Like there's electronic transfers going everywhere. Money's
Right.
everywhere.
Right.
It's
Right.
flowing all the time. And go more general that way until you can, I don't know, just start more general or something more believable that you can actually feel and buy into.
Mm.
In that, for example, it just depends on the subject and like where you are at.
Right. Right. It makes sense that it would depend on the subject. And I think you're right. I agree with you on the whole $1 million kind of example. Like definitely, like breaking it down into so-called digestible bits, and then like
Mhm.
manifesting just like a bit by bit. Yeah, because I don't think like when you're starting like certain things, yeah, your mind just can't wrap around certain things. But that's why I guess like the whole idea of manifesting in steps does exist. So yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. So like I know you always like often share like a course in miracles.
Mhm.
Yeah, so like did that have an impact on your current understanding of this whole manifesting and co-creating? I was just curious on that. Yeah.
Yeah, it for sure did.
Right.
I found it a little bit difficult because the principles are kind of at odds with, you know, manifestation, kind of. Like I felt that, I don't know, the deeper I go into it, it's not really, but it's more about surrendering and like allowing God to work through you. So,
Right.
but that miracles are always present, but you have resistance. And it's very deep. It's very, very deep. So it talks about how like there's this other book called The Disappearance of the Universe, and it's kind of like, I don't know, they call it like a can opener to A Course in Miracles, and basically it talks about how the uh, creation of the universe or whatever, like basically the universe was created because um, we are dreaming. So the idea is like we're all dreaming. We're all
Right.
dreaming the same dream from different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
And this dream started because it's a dream of separation from God. And so like it describes every negative thing or every problem or every, not desirable thing as guilt, or guilt from that separation from God projected onto the screen of space or projected onto others. And then the antidote to that and remembering who we are is forgiveness. And so it's a very like deep, deep concept, and that
It
whole
is.
book
It
kind of
is.
like
It
blew my
is.
mind open.
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of like on a different, different level.
Right.
But
No. No.
I do,
Yeah.
I do, I do study those. It's the workbook of A Course in Miracles is 365 lessons, one for each day of the year, and it's an undoing of that ego essentially. So basically uncovering your ego mind, which is resistance and fear and lack, and lifting those away so that you can
Mm.
perceive correctly, which is that miracles are everywhere and natural and normal. And then I guess you could say that manifestations are miracles anyway. So same in that
Right.
way.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Like, I think one thing that I've seen in the community is that, like, folks are often they kind of freak out to to if something kind of shakes up their beliefs, you know
Yeah.
like, I
Yeah.
like how you went head on with it. Like, even if something is contradictory information potentially, you weren't exactly like, you didn't hesitate per se to kind of see, okay, let's see what this is about. I guess, like, that's the kind of mindset you kind of tackled it with. And and I
Absolutely.
really think that's a good thing, because I always say that it's good to have your values and views like challenged, because that's how one grows, right? um
Absolutely.
yeah, and I often tell this to people, like, because many people have different views, and they often want to get my views on, like, infinite parallel realities and things like that. And I always put, like, a huge disclaimer these days. I'm like, if you ask me a year from now, I might have a completely different answer for you, FYI.
Right.
um
Exactly.
yeah, because that's
And
how, like,
just
I
allowing. Sorry.
yeah, yeah. Because I try not to hold on to things as tightly anymore, because that way, you get to see a different lens, a different perspective that you may not even have thought of, that could finally click for you. And
Exactly.
yeah, and I think, like, you really you kind of embody that really well, where you're always, like, looking up different things, and you're learning. And it's just great, like, just to see that. And so, whereas, like, if someone's views are getting challenged, like, in the beginning, I'm sure it was somewhat of a, it wasn't probably the easiest of things for you, I assume, to have your existing values challenged, even when you adopted, like, the law of attraction or law of assumption. So how did you
Yeah.
transition from that, and, like, what advice would you have, for someone who kind of wants to explore these types of things, but, like, they're hesitating because it's just such an attack on their value system, that they don't even know what to kind of believe in anymore. If someone is hesitant, like, what would you tell your younger self, for example? Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's been a process. And definitely when I first came across the law of attraction, it was like, okay, but what about all the stuff that I don't want? Like, why is this here?
Mm.
Like, I would never create this stuff. Like, and then, taking on guilt about that kind of stuff. But um, just kind of learning that you cannot, like, holding on to those types of feelings of guilt for creating negative things just doesn't obviously help, because then you're just creating more negative things because you're holding on to guilt. But just like
Right.
accepting responsibility and moving on, and creating from the right now rather than looking on the past or the present, but looking at physical manifested things that you don't like. um, but with regards to A Course in Miracles, like, I just it just feels like a calling to me. So I think if your beliefs are being challenged by something, um, you're not obligated to, I think it is a sign of growth to be able to, okay, question and allow your beliefs to be questioned. Especially, like, it just reminds me of religion, where it's like, if you're raised a certain way in a religion, and then
Right.
people question, like, why is everything this certain, rigid way, and why am I being outcast for, like, even questioning it? I think that's I think that's pretty dangerous. So I think that it is healthy to question our beliefs and, learn and grow, and realize that we are a tiny little speck on a ball spinning through space. So what
Right,
the heck do we
exactly.
know, honestly? Like,
Exactly.
just
Yeah.
allow yourself to, realize how small you really are. Like, your little ego self does not know everything. So just being open to different ideas and different possibilities. And if it doesn't resonate, then that's okay. You don't, there, people have different beliefs. Like, you can, just take what resonates and leave the rest. But if it feels like a calling to you, like A Course in Miracles does for me, it feels like when I practice the lessons, I feel a profound, deep sense of peace within myself, and I do notice a
Right.
difference in my life. Um, it's just, there's so many different paths to feeling that peace within yourself. It's just whatever you're called to do personally. But yeah, I think just having an open mind and being willing to question your own beliefs, because that's the only way you're going to grow. You'll just stay stagnant if you just want to stay in a little box all the time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think like you really phrased it really well. We like living on a rock that's hurling through space. It's really insane to think about, like when you put it in that perspective, like like we don't recognize it every single day, but like if the earth stops spinning for even a second or something, apparently we will all be like thrusted in one direction. And
Yeah,
right. It's crazy because we the systems that are in place, like we are in such a delicate balance, and we
yeah.
really sometimes don't think about how crazy that is. Like sometimes I'll be listening to Joe Rogan's podcast, and then he'll bring that up sometimes, and I'm like, oh my goodness, yes, and it's just
Like
so
the sun,
crazy.
the sun is
Yeah,
like the sun is like the perfect, not perfect distance away that we don't like get burned to a crisp. Like, just so many
exactly.
things that are just like, oh, and how we just focus on our problems and like what we need to fix all the time. And it's like, okay, there is so much abundance and so much happening in our favor all the time that we don't even
Right.
acknowledge, like those types of things. Like, I don't know, it's just it's just hilarious. Yeah, if you zoom out, it's like, okay, things are going pretty well.
Oh, absolutely. Like I think, looking back, because as a teenager, I always used to be stressed out about something, and like when I look back and I kind of take a step back, I was like, you had everything at that point. You didn't
Yeah,
have to worry about getting the next meal. You had a roof over your head. You had 3 meals a
yeah.
day. you know um, you had a pretty good life, and you had everything that you needed. And it's so easy to get wrapped around our problems and things like that. But if we let that kind of like consume us, it will. But there's like what you said, there's just so many things that we can be grateful for. And if we focus on that, we will attract more of that, and two, we're going to be at peace. And I think you really summed it up really well when you said and I use this as somewhat of a compass for me as well, is if something brings peace for me, then I certainly kind of gravitates towards that. um you
Exactly.
know and if something is feels very stressful, or if that feels like a lot of work, or just even thinking about certain things can drain the life
Mhm.
out of us. And that's when I know,
Yeah,
like, what, maybe this isn't for me. And
exactly.
yeah, so that's kind of something I use as a somewhat of a compass, like even prior to like learning manifestation. But of course it always kind of ruffles my feathers against, like the manifestation, the law of assumption belief systems. Am I thinking from my ego, or is this something that's genuinely guiding me? Then I've always kind of had that, a bit of like a, I guess you could say, like a conflict in belief, I guess you could say. But I
Yeah.
think, like what you say, like as long as I feel peaceful, that's what I gravitate towards all the time these days. Because at the end of the
Mhm.
day, that's my objective with everything in life, is to, we want our desires because we want to be a happy, and b feel peaceful, and ideally speaking, ensure that it lasts for as long as we would like it to. And I think like that's the kind of compass that I'm like using these days as well. And I think, again, like you really summed it up really, really well there. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, like I just want to go back to something you just touched on, which was like
Yeah.
we want our desires because we want to be happy. So it's like we think that these things, the money, the car, the SP,
Mhm.
whatever, is gonna make us feel a certain way. And like if you think about it from that perspective, it's like, okay, I'm in lack and I need that thing over there to fill my void and make me feel complete and whole and happy and peaceful. Whereas it's the opposite way. Like you need to find wholeness, peace, joy, happiness, from within and live
Mhm.
from that place. And that's when everything flows in without effort.
Right,
It's like
right,
Dr.
right.
Joe Dispenza talks about how like your personality creates your personal reality. So change from within and then the outer reflects that.
Oh, absolutely. I totally resonate with that. Like, I actually forgot about the personality being personal reality. I really forgot that. Yeah. Thanks for reminding me of that. Um, and yeah, it's so true. Like, we think that the external things can, bring us a certain joy, or, make us feel a certain way. But I think, like, like one thing is that a relationship, for example, is not going to solve all your problems. You can have a partner and
Exactly.
still feel like crap all the time. That
Yeah.
like something is still missing, like, that you can be in like the so-called dream company you want to be in and still have a void, within you. From the outside,
Yeah.
it might look like you have everything that you want, but like deep down, that that is not your calling, for example. And
Exactly.
that internal, like, I call it like the internal kind of scream. Like, you can't just like kind of mute that. You can't just brush it off, at least not for
Yeah.
long. You can do it successfully, maybe like uh for a week or for even a month, but like it kind of catches up to you, and you trying to hold it
Absolutely.
back, kind of like wears you down as well.
Yeah.
And
It's just like, are you referring to when you're not being authentic to who you are
yeah,
in a
exactly,
situation
exactly,
that, yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Like, I've noticed that even with like my experiences, is that like if I'm not being authentic to myself or something like that, even from the outside, like it might look like, like, oh, I'm doing really really well type of way, but like deep down I know that I could be so much more, and something is really holding me back, and I know that it's only a matter
Mm.
of time before everything kind of collapses. Like, when I was again back in school, like, and doing kind of this business, and kind of expanding as well, like folks thought I was like, killing it, right? Because I was like
Yeah.
topping my classes, but business was doing really well too. Like, it was kind of growing at that point. It wasn't as big as it is right now, but I was always like, like, I remember talking to some of my lecturers, and like they were like, oh, you're doing really well, and I was like, yeah, but I don't know why, but I feel like I'm an airplane that's feels like, I was put together with like duct tapes, you know like I might just
Oh, yeah.
come
Yeah.
at any point. Like, this is so, like, I don't know how long I can kind of pull this off, and that kind of, like, I had to put an end to it, because of that reason.
Mm.
Because from the
Yeah.
outsider's perspective, it really didn't make sense. But yeah, sorry, you were saying.
Oh, I was just gonna say I have that resonates with me. I went to school for a little bit, like I went to college to study
Right.
accounting for a little while, and
Oh
um,
my.
I had no direction. What's that?
Right. No, I was like, oh
What
my,
did you say?
because accounting is, it's like, yeah,
The
I feel
opposite of
you on that.
creativity.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, like I had no direction in life. I was like 20 or something, and my
Right.
grandpa's an accountant, and he was gonna pay for school and give me his business once I was done school, and just this path laid out for me. But
Mm.
yeah, I was like, oh, like don't know what I'm doing, so not gonna pass up this opportunity of like a mature business at the end of this. Like that sounds like
Oh,
a good
absolutely.
way to make
Yeah. Yeah.
money and
Yeah.
all of this stuff. But I just could not with the accounting. Like the school was so hard, and I just hated it so
Right.
much, and just out of alignment, so out of alignment. Just like the classes, like I failed accounting 110 and had to do it again, and just like yeah, I had to drop out. I was like, oh, sorry, Grandpa, I just can't. It's just like so not me.
Oh, absolutely.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I have a similar experience, like prior to like me enlisting in the military and everything. Like, coming from a brown family, like, your path is kind of like laid out for you, right? Like, you're either like a
yeah,
doctor or an engineer. So like I apparently screamed engineer for some reason. And yeah, that was the path that was kind of pushed towards me. Like, the famous words that were told to me was, what are you going to be if you're not going to be an engineer? This was told to me when I was like
Mm,
15, and I honestly didn't know what I was going to be. And I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go with the flow and figure this out. And that was probably the most disastrous decision I ever took in my life. Even though I knew that I would excel in the arts, not drawing per se, but like the arts in general. Like that's where I knew like I would shine. I kind of brushed it off because I thought like that was not real, quote unquote, talent, or like, that's not a real career, for example.
mm,
And yeah, and I really paid the price for not being true to myself. Basically, like you, it was very similar to your journey. And yeah, ever since that, like one thing I've never, like I've always made it a point to be honest with myself, and take decisions from that perspective as much as I can. And it's also, like, as much as like it might kind of like ruffle some feathers in the short term, like in the like with family potentially. Like I'm sure when you dropped out, like you probably like had some eyebrows raised by your family, for example. You know but you probably
my
had to
my
do
family
that
was
decision.
pretty
Yeah.
well. They were pretty supportive overall. My grandpa was just like, "Oh yeah, I knew it." I was so nervous to tell him, but luckily they were pretty supportive, so it wasn't bad
Awesome,
bother.
awesome, awesome. Yeah, yeah. But was there any doubts or anything like that before you kind of opened up to folks, or like how was that process for you? Like
Yeah,
when you,
I
yeah,
avoided telling my grandpa for so long because it's like, okay, I've spent his money doing this for a few years, and like just yeah, it was very uncomfortable to pivot. But I again, the intuition was just like so strong and nudging, like, oh, this is not for you. So yeah, you just cannot ignore that, otherwise it is disastrous.
oh, absolutely, yeah. Thanks for sharing that, because I feel like a lot of people need to hear these types of stories,
Yeah.
especially if they're going through something that they might not want to be in right now. I feel like
Yeah.
this is something that they need to hear, to kind of like inspire them to be true to themselves, for sure. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. So earlier, like we spoke about like meditation, for example, as a way to kind of quieten down the things around us and to hear the voice within us clearly. Like, is
Yeah.
there, in your experience, any other known ways of like maybe amplifying that voice?
Oh my God,
we
yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I have been really into breath work lately, and
Mhm,
I
mhm,
don't know if you've
mhm.
ever heard of Audra Bear. Have you heard of her?
No, not really. Yeah.
Okay, so she's a breathwork teacher.
Okay,
Her
okay,
Instagram is Audra Bear. Anyway, she
okay.
kind of brought me around to. I mean, Wim Hof as well. He talks about breathwork. Do you know who Wim Hof is?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I think
Yeah,
is he the
the
Iceman?
Iceman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
he
Awesome.
talks
Yeah,
about
yeah, yeah.
cold water immersion or cold water therapy, and he does this breath work. So anyway, um, essentially it's been around for years and years and years. It's not like a new thing, but it's gaining popularity at the moment. But essentially you control the way you're breathing. There's different methods of doing it, but the longer ones, Audra has some like longer ones that are like 40 or 50 minutes, and you get into a different state of consciousness, and your body kind of does things where it's like the body temperature changes, and like your mind just it's kind of like taking psychedelics without taking psychedelics. So it just changes the chemistry in your brain, and it
Right,
definitely, I feel, accelerates you even more than meditation. um, and it's awesome, but it is work. So it's like same with meditation. It's like you have to like set aside the time. You have to
mm,
you know be ready to deal with your thoughts if they're coming up. You like it's work. It's not like just a walk in the park. Like both of those things, meditation and breath work. But yes, I would highly highly recommend breath work. I just feel like it's an accelerator. Audra explained it like, if you compare like keeping home, like meditation is like keeping things tidy and keeping things in place and where they belong. And breath work is
Wow.
like a power washing. So like all of, you know how you store emotions in your body, all of those, it's like power washing out the yucky stuff out of your body, that you, all that
Right.
stagnant energy, it's power washing it out. And you just feel so good and light after. Yeah, it's awesome. I can't recommend it enough.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely leave the description, leave the links in the description for all of the things that you mentioned. Yeah, because I think you mentioned, like, the analogies you use, like, really kind of puts things into perspective for sure. Um
Totally.
yeah, absolutely. I think yeah, because I think these are tools that, like, I think folks need to be aware of, just to, not necessarily, like, maybe use it immediately or something, but, hey, this is out there, at least know about it. And when the time is right, when you feel
Yeah,
like, you get the calling for it,
so cool.
yeah, go ahead and kind of, try it out and see, where it leads you. Because, I would say, like, definitely, unless you really get the calling, then it may not be 100% effective for you. Would you agree with that, or what's your take on it? Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like if you're like in a space where you're like, I don't believe in this. I mean, I'm obviously that's going to work against you, but I do
Mm.
think that it changes your physiology. So like, I mean, obviously don't do something if you're not called to it, but yeah,
Right, right,
basically,
right.
yeah, I would agree. But I do think it's super powerful. So like, if you even have the tiniest little nudge or calling, then I would definitely, even if you just do it once a week. And the Wim Hof
Mm.
ones are, there's like a free one on YouTube that's like only 10 minutes, and you can still feel the benefits even if you just do a quick one too.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for, like, sharing all of those things. I think, yeah, these tips are really useful, to really, because I feel like, it's really important to kind of see, like, what the inner voice has to say to us. And I don't think that, like, folks are giving it the enough importance to it, especially, I guess, in the conscious manifesting community, where it's like, everything can be kind of classified as like ego, just,
Yeah.
and I think, like, you brought up, like, really, good ways of, like, identifying with the higher self. And yeah, like, I really resonated with all of the things that you said. I'm definitely going to be checking out the breath work of it and everything. So one thing I wanted to know your views on is, like, how Dr. Joe Dispenza often, I think, like, in the first few chapters of, like, I think it was Becoming Supernatural, I believe, like, where he spoke about, like, experiencing time simultaneously, like, where he's like the person sitting on the sofa, where he's like, the guy looking at himself from, like, the outside and things like that. So I would just want to know, like, how do you, like, view the whole time aspect? Like, do you view it as, like, the past, present, and the future kind of existing simultaneously, and that, our, you know that we experience it as, like, the past, present, and future because of the three dimensions that we are living in? I just wanted to know your views on, like, how do you think
Sure.
about time? Yeah.
I don't know if I know that exact example. Like I've definitely read his books, but I don't know if I can recall that exact example. You said the couch with him looking at himself from the outside. Can
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
elaborate on that?
Yeah, so
Like,
basically, I think he was, like, just, just sitting down one day. He was kind of in a meditative state, and, he was, like, going, like, he was having some sort of an experience where he was, like, going back into his past life, I believe. Like, he was, like,
oh,
seeing, him being in an old town where he was, like, tortured to death at one point.
it's
And
like a past life. Okay, yeah, cool.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then, like, yeah, and then he kind of came back to the present, and then he saw himself, like, sitting on the couch doing what he was doing, but he was on the outside, as almost like a third
Yeah,
person, doing. It was, like, very, like, a, almost like a very, like, it was almost like an out of body experience, I guess you could say.
yeah,
He knew, he was very aware, like, his awareness was just so heightened. And yeah, I was just, like, wondering, like, because I know, like, you're very familiar with his work and stuff like that, so just wanted to see, like, if you
yeah,
had a different perspective on it or something. Yeah.
totally. You know what that reminds me of is Neville Goddard's story about he had like, I don't know if it was his aunt or his sister, like her son was sick or something, and he wanted to comfort her, but
Or
they were in different cities. So he
yeah,
went
yeah,
into
yeah.
her, like he went into his imagination and he went into her room,
Mm.
or his room, and then she saw him physically there, like at the same time, and like obviously they didn't have the internet, so she like wrote him a letter, and that she basically saw him at this day at this time.
Yeah.
So he went there
Yeah.
in his imagination, and she saw him physically there. So yeah, I believe in all that kind of stuff. Like, we are not our bodies. So this is like what A Course in Miracles teaches. We're not our bodies. Like, we, time and space are things that we experience here on this 3D plane because we're in bodies. We're
Mhm.
not our bodies, but we are experiencing life through a human body. So like, yeah, we experience time and we think we can think of all these memories in the past, but like, really, even those memories of the past, they're embellished by us. Like, they're, even if like if you physically had the ability to go back, it would not feel the same, it would not be the exact same. Like, it's not even real, it's just
Mm.
in your mind, and
Mm.
you only get it alive in your mind. Like, that's why, ruminating on things in the past, it's like, obviously, just, if it's not serving you, just let things go. But yeah, I definitely, believe that time and space are not real. That's, in Dr. Joe Dispenza's meditations, you go like into the void, and it's just like black space, blackness where time and space don't exist.
Right.
And which is why, like, even Neville Goddard, when you're talking about manifesting something, it vibrationally exists, like, already. If you think of something like,
Mhm.
how we, for example, the I don't know, he has a tennis ball example, I think, but whatever. If you hold a tennis ball, and it's like, you can see that in your mind, and you can feel the feel of the fabric, and it's like, okay, a baseball, you can feel the laces around in the baseball. It's like, where is that? Like, if you can feel that, you can
Mm.
feel the feeling of that in your mind, like, where is that? It exists somewhere. So it's like, the reason why time and space don't exist is because, like, you can, imagine something, and then it's going to pop up in your, time space reality that we perceive, that isn't actually, it's all an illusion. So yeah, just kind of like a rant, but I definitely believe that time and space are not real. And that's another thing where it's like, we're all connected and we're all one. So when you think of
Right.
somebody and call you, it's like, we're connected through time and space. Is not a real thing. It's like, you can, um, influence other minds by thinking of
Mhm.
them, where you are. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like, I mean, it just always, like, no matter how many times I hear these types of things, like, it always kind of like blows my mind.
Yeah.
Especially I remember that Neville example that you're talking about right now, and like, it was so crazy because I was like, how on earth like could that have happened, like, but then again, like, one thing that, like, I remember Neil deGrasse Tyson like talking about, like, explaining infinity to Joe Rogan, and he was like saying,
Yeah.
like, the universe is under no obligation to make sense to you, and that sentence
Yeah.
just blew my mind. Like, I was like, that is so true, you know
Totally.
um
It comes back to, like, our little human ego mind, like, knows nothing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So, like, how does, like, one kind of, like, like, handle that? Like, how does one say, like, okay, I know nothing, and how does, like, one navigate that whole ego thing, if that makes sense? Because, like, I think at one point we all have to kind of recognize, like, the things that doesn't really amount to much, and but I guess
Yeah.
the question then would be like, well, where like, does the knowledge that we have learned thus far, where does it even come useful then, if we know nothing really? How do you
Well,
deal
I
with that
think it's,
dilemma? Yeah.
yeah, well, I think it is. I think it's still useful to you. Like,
Right.
and this is the other thing where it's like a bit of a, like, at one point in my law of assumption journey, I definitely was like, there's no such thing as lessons. Like, you're just creating everything, and what you assume to be true will show up in your reality, and that's it. But it's like, that's the belief. That's just a belief, and that's, I don't know. My experience, like, or my perspective now on that is that there are lessons to be learned, and so your experiences are, helping you evolve and learn and grow. So, like, everything that you experience is, it's like, it's a paradox because it is important, and it does teach you something in it, and it's there to teach, it's there to, teach you to love and to be better and to forgive and, like, to evolve. um
Hmm.
so the paradox of that, where it's like, it matters, where also, like, nothing matters because, like, we're not even real. So, like,
Right. Right.
it's
Right.
a bit of a paradox, but, like, um, I think it's comforting. It's like um, all that really matters is um, how you love others and how you know show up in the world and how you are of service. So and then the lessons that you learn along the way to show up that way. Like I feel like the people in your life, the situations, it's all there to help you learn and grow to be better. So I think that's the perspective that I take on it.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think that that's a very good way of like handling things. Like what you said, it is definitely a paradox. Yeah, so I think, yeah, I definitely agree with you. I'm kind of like processing everything as well as we are talking. It's just like, yeah, I love it. I honestly love it. Like, I love all the analogies you're giving. And I think like, everyone's gonna find it really useful as well. I think it's great. So yeah, I think one thing I really wanted to talk to you about was like like manifesting wealth and money, because then why does
Mhm.
this kind of fit into all this then, because in the
Yeah,
3D, like what Neville would say as well, like there has to, like Caesar's coin, right? Like that's what he will say, like there are things that we need to do, like we need to pay rent, or we need to meet our daily
yeah.
obligations and things like that. So where does that like fit into all this? Like how does one kind of juggle those types of commitments and like trying to find the truth of it all, the truth of life and all that type of stuff? Like how does one balance that?
Like how the fact that we need money to live here on Earth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think that, connecting to who you really are and, practicing, aligning, with your higher self and meditation or whatever, breath work, those types of things. And basically, what those things do is help you embody um, a better version of yourself and show up in life as, somebody who is more abundant and does have more resources. So I think that um, it's not something to be like. Obviously, those things are like a manifestation that'll automatically come um, from aligning to your higher self. Like I feel like obviously you're gonna need resources. We all need resources, but I think again it comes back to like showing up as or like vibrating at the feeling that you want to experience. So like I do think that you know a lot of people live in lack, and so if you're living in
Mm.
lack, you're going to experience lack. So practicing feeling safety is something that I've been doing lately. Feeling a feeling of like a bubble of safety. So just radiating out security and safety, and then watching that reflect back. So practicing the feeling of it um, prior to any evidence of, if you're trying to manifest more money, because obviously we all would love to have more money. So it's gonna be like we obviously need resources to be able to do the things that we love to do, and money's just energy. So if somebody's providing a service or providing a product or something that you want, that's energy, and you're paying them with money, which is also energy. So everything's just an exchange of energy. And so to think of it that way, I feel is kind of comforting. But yeah, like obviously we're living in our human bodies and we need things like shelter and food and money to like go about
Mm.
this earth. So um, I think how we can navigate that is to um, shift and change our mindset around um, just shifting from a lack mindset to an abundance mindset. I think everybody has, no matter what someone's financial situation is, like everybody has these little weird off little beliefs about money that like everyone can have, a benefit in shifting and changing the way you feel and think about money and the way that it's um, everywhere.
Right, right. You mentioned about like like putting a bubble out of like safety and security. Like what's the process with that? Like how do you go about, like is it like a meditation that you kind of do, or what's the process there?
It's like, I guess so, but like it's kind of like um in my life. So like I'm not sitting down to, I mean you can, that's a thing, but um
Right.
if I'm walking, let's say I'm walking to Starbucks. So I'm walking to Starbucks and I'm feeling safety radiate out. I'm looking around at the buildings and the trees, and this place is safe. I'm thinking that this place is safe. This place supports me. Like no matter where I go, I'm supported, safe. Because yeah, I think that um, just thinking of, for example, if you come from a childhood where there was a lot of lack and limitation around money and things like that, it's like you're in a state of um, if you're worrying about money all the time, you're feeling unsafe. So, and even like money aside, it's like crime in the neighborhood or like whatever things that occur that are unsafe. It's like there's something you're feeling unsafe from within if you're experiencing those, even if you're hearing about those types of things. It's like if it's in your experience in any way, if you're hearing about it or you're witnessing it, it's manifesting from a feeling of unsafety. So anyway, it's like walking around, I'm radiating out the feeling, like practicing different feelings, because we get addicted to certain emotions of like lack, that like whatever different varying things that stem from fear or lack, whatever feeling like guilt or whatever feeling that some people are addicted to and they live in. So
Right, right, right.
practicing a different perspective and radiating out a different feeling, um, to manifest like a different reality.
Right. No, I completely agree with you. Yeah. Like I think so your process then is like kind of like giving yourself those pep talks then. Like, that's how you kind of do it. Like as you're walking through different places, you're just kind of like talking yourself through those things and you're like kind of just reassuring yourself
Yeah,
and
I
things
feel
like
like
that. Eh, right.
it's more of a feeling. It's more of a
Right.
feeling. So
Right.
it's, I mean, or like it's kind of like a walking meditation on the word safety or on the word security. Like I'll
Oh,
think
okay.
that
I,
word
I I like that. Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
and radiate out that feeling so that I
Awesome.
focus on
Awesome.
security and safety and abundance. Yeah.
Right, right. No, that makes sense. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that because I feel like, that could again like benefit a lot of people, including myself. Like this is something, you can like try out like during your morning commute or something like that. So yeah, I really thought that was something I can experiment with for sure. So yeah, thanks for sharing that.
No worries. Yeah, it feels really good. And I think it's like also a consistency thing too, like with anything. It's not like I'm just gonna see how safety feels for a second and then go back to feeling unsafe for the rest of my day. It's like you kind of have to like be consistent and practice, to see, obviously to see results. It's like your dominant feeling is what manifests. So it's like making it a consistent kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think you also mentioned about the whole like becoming addicted to certain emotions. I think that can really happen. And I think like a lot of like conscious manifesting is about like unlearning those patterns and like coming back to like a state of abundance, love, and safety, and feeling like secure and things like that. And you know and that this is one thing that I wanted to ask you, because when someone kind of goes through like like transition phases, right? It's only normal for them to feel like those emotions, for example, like the emotions that you're not addicted to feel like not natural, right? Because that hasn't been their state for a long time. And then
Right.
like but then like how would they know if it's for them? Like you get what I mean? Like how would they know that to kind of like come back to that? Like how would they know that that's actually beneficial for them? Like I mean, intellectually they do, but how does like one kind of
You
like
mean
like yeah, sorry,
you mean
go
like
ahead. Yeah.
practicing? Sorry, you're asking like how do they know if it's beneficial to them to practice a different feeling?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Okay. So like if they're it comes back to like Dr. Joe Dispenza, right? So your personality creates your personal reality. So how you've been thinking and feeling and showing up until this point is what got
Mhm.
you your current reality. So like if you don't like that, then you need to feel and think a different way. So
Right.
obviously you would need to um, just be aware of like your 3D reality is giving you evidence of where you've been at vibrationally or emotionally and slash, from your thoughts. Like that's your evidence of what you've been doing so far. So if that doesn't work for you, then you got to show up differently and think and feel differently than what you're used to. And like, obviously, like what you said, it's unnatural to just, you're not like, it's almost impossible. You're not going to be like, for an example, like let's say if you're extremely unhealthy and you have like really bad habits of like, I don't know, like you're smoking and you're eating too much and like junk food or whatever, and like you feel awful and terrible, it's going to be like almost impossible to just be like, I'm the healthiest I've ever been. Like it's just going to be a discord within yourself. You're not going to believe it. So it's like,
Mm.
maybe that's like a weird example, but like you you need to like, this is where like meditation and breathwork come in. It's like if you have a practice that you commit to yourself, you're committing to yourself, you want to change. So you're committing to yourself that you're going to do something every day. Like even if it's just 10 minutes, like you're doing that every day, it's going to shift and change the way your physiology, it's going to change how you feel within, and it's going to make it easier to practice those feelings. So like, yeah, just picking one thing that can help shift you away from, those addictive emotions, whatever they may be, that can assist you into like launching you out of that place, because obviously you just want to gradually feel better and better rather than try to flip from, like if you're in a really terrible spot in some area and you're just trying to immediately flip from, like if you're in lack and you have like you're all this debt and you're in the negative in your bank account, and then you're just like, it's going to feel off for you to feel like, oh, I'm so abundant and like all this money's coming in. It's like, it feels like a lie. So again, like going more general with your thoughts and feelings
Mm.
around money, and pointing out the abundance that is in your life. Because abundance just isn't just money. It's like, I have an abundance of health. I have an abundance of good relationships. I have a roof over my head. That's abundance. When I turn on the tap, water comes out.
Mm.
Like my power just went out last night, and I was like in the middle of cooking, and I'm like, okay, I just take for granted that when I turn the light switch on, the light is there.
Right.
Like the light is
Absolutely.
there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
dark outside and I need the freaking light to live my life. And then my Wi-Fi's not working, and then my data wasn't working at the same time. So I literally like finished making my tofu with my flashlight on my phone, and I'm like, I'm so grateful for the light. Like just there's
Right.
abundance in so
Right.
many freaking ways. Like even coming back to like the earth being the perfect distance away from the sun, like everything is orchestrated in your favor, and focusing on those things, just focusing on the abundance that isn't necessarily money related if you're in a spot where that feels really off, but reaching for those thoughts that you can resonate with that are on the topic of abundance, and just gradually moving your feeling towards, feeling better.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think you described it really well, and yeah, it's only when like when the power goes out, or when the water isn't like coming, that's when you kind of realize like how abundant you are, because it kind of like puts things into perspective, definitely. So yeah, I mean, thanks for sharing that. No, really, like it's those types of incidents that makes you go, oh my goodness, like these are the things that I always have. Like having a roof over your head is such a blessing. Like I don't think like we like it's a I don't think we realize it every single day, like how blessed we are in that way. um but yeah, absolutely. So yeah, like do you have anything for the viewers, like how they can reach out to you, or do you have any like final remarks, like to say, or yeah.
Yeah, just I think if, for again going back to the intuition thing, like if you're
Mhm.
in a situation where you're not sure, like if you're at a fork in the road and you're not sure which way to go and you're questioning it, um, no one outside of you can tell you what you're supposed to do. It's within yourself. The answer is within yourself, which
Mhm.
which can be like really annoying to hear sometimes. But just like if you get quiet and you listen and you feel what's in your body, like what is your body telling you? What decision is your body like telling you to make? Or journal about it. Like what are your thoughts and feelings about it? If you're journaling it out, that's another really good way to suss out like where your intuition's pointing you towards. But yeah, just listen to yourself, and there's nobody outside of you can tell you what to do. So just like trust yourself is what I would say. And again, to find me, it's just Hillary Jubilee, Hillary with two L's, on Instagram and on YouTube.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. I'll leave all your descriptions, all your links in the description down below, so that they can
Sweet.
find you as well. And yeah, I mean, thank you so much for coming, and it's been a pleasure. Yeah.
Thanks for having me. It's super fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So, guys, thank you for watching. If this video resonated with you, be sure to drop a like and a comment down below. Turn on your bell notification so that you guys will know when I upload a new video every single week. Guys, stay safe and happy manifesting. Peace.